Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beg to Differ, the show where we discuss and disagree on two new subjects every episode. I'm Ghostfacer.
And I'm Teacup, and today we'll be talking about horror subgenres. In particular, I tend to be a fan more of psychological horror, and Ghost here is a fan of.
Slashers. I like the
Hmm,
slashers. I'm very excited to talk about this subject. So excited because,
yeah.
as you know, horror is like my life. Not that
Mhm.
I'm living in, uh, you know, the life of a horror character, but I very much, it's my favorite genre of anything. Movies, video
Oh,
games.
really? I hadn't
You
noticed.
hadn't noticed?
No.
Crazy. And of course it's the spooky time of year. So there's lots of horror movies coming out right now. So this is just it's a very enjoyable time and I was like, we have to talk about horror somehow for the podcast.
Mhm.
And
Perfect for the spoopy
yes,
season.
the spoopy season. Got to get the spoops in before it's too late. Um and unfortunately, somebody here is not as well versed in horror. It's
Yeah.
it's the one who drinks tea.
well, Well, I do appreciate horror sometimes, but like I wouldn't call it my favorite genre. I mean, I know you love it a lot, so a lot of my exposure to horror actually comes from you
It's
because
true.
you usually would just like show me stuff, and then I'll be like, "Oh, hey, that's pretty
Yeah, I'll
cool."
just be like, "You want to see this indie horror game?" And you're just like, "All right."
Yeah,
I'm like, "You want to play Five Nights at Freddy's?" Okay.
I can only like name like maybe like a couple that I've like just found on my own,
Of like
but
games or movies.
um, both.
Ah, the
That variety.
disgrace, the slander. Ooh, there's a tiny spider in my room.
Oh,
It came for the spookies.
yeah, it's a
It's a
sign.
sign. It's a sign that it's time to talk about horror. Well, I will go ahead. I'll give some examples of the slasher genre and why I love it so much. Um, I mean, obviously, slashers are kind of originated from like 80s, 90s. There were a lot of there are the start of all the franchises like Halloween and Friday the 13th and what I mean Chucky, and I guess Nightmare on Elm Street is sometimes put under slasher, but that's almost more psychological horror.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know anything about Nightmare on Elm Street. it's the
It's
it's Freddy
he
Krueger.
learns like attacks, yeah, in your
Yeah, so
dreams.
since it's like dream stuff,
Yeah.
I would put that more under psychological, which is probably why I don't like it that much. And well, let me say, like I've seen just as much psychological horror as slasher. Like I'm basically love all horror. I just my favorites are the slashers. Um, and that goes for video games too. That's why my favorite indie developer um for horror video games is Puppet Combo, as you know,
Yeah.
because I showed you a bunch of their some
Mhm.
gameplay of their videos, but they have this like really particular style that's like, well, the way the visuals look are kind of like emulate like PS1 or PS2 graphics.
Yeah. Have, like, a very retro look
Yeah,
to
they're
them.
very retro, and then their covers are always, there's like sometimes VHS static, and but then the like subject and the antagonists of the games are always very inspired by that genre of horror that's like, a villain, a slasher. Um, so like there's Nun Massacre, which is, a nun chasing you with a knife.
Yeah.
They actually have a game called Babysitter Bloodbath, which is like basically Halloween. That's one of the earlier ones. And then they have, I don't think I showed you gameplay, but this one's really cool. This game called Night Ripper. Um, and there's like this stalker that drives around neighborhoods and you have to like avoid him. But They very, very cool games. I would definitely recommend them to anyone. Oh, and they just recently, oh, I don't think I told you this. They I don't, I'm not sure if we watched, did we watch gameplay for Murder House?
We might
It's
have.
the Easter Bunny killer.
Oh, no,
Okay.
that one I don't think
Okay,
so.
we didn't.
We've seen, like, a few of them together, and then there's some, like, I watched on my own too, but
You watched them on your own? I'm so proud of you. Well, yeah, but anyways, Murder House, which is one of their, like, most popular ones and also one of their most recent ones, just got put on the Switch.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
really?
so excited for them. It's like it's a big deal. I think it also went to, like, the other platforms too. I think it's on Xbox and probably PlayStation, but it's like when you get a game on the consoles, man, that's when you're legit.
Mhm.
But and that game's really cool too. But anyways, um I find slasher horror just so enthralling because it's just like something about the idea of just a stalker. You know, like a physical stalker chasing you is just it's so freaky and it's so fun to just sit on the edge of your seat. And like it does obviously horror movies and these slashers, they often cross over into supernatural, like
Yeah.
especially in the Friday the 13th and Halloween movies, like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees get killed over and over at the end of every movie and then somehow they're alive again for the next one.
Yeah.
So while it is supernatural, they come back and they're pretty much still the same thing though, just walking after you. At, I would say a quick walk. They're like
Yeah.
old ladies going for a walk, doing the thing with their arms, but they never run after you, and I always find that really funny because then like
Yeah, it
the
is.
protagonists are like screaming and running for their lives, and the killer's just like scooting along.
Mhm.
It's pretty
And
funny.
the protagonist always ends up tripping
Oh my
somehow
god,
or something.
always. Even if it's like, oh, they're not running in the woods, they're just like in a neighborhood. Like, what are you tripping on?
Yeah.
And it's always just like they kind of trip and then they like look behind them and like just take their time getting back up. Like they're not even that much in a rush.
Oh gosh, I know. It's so
And you're just like,
it's so funny.
get up, run.
Dude, we could literally spend, like, all day talking about horror movie tropes because 'cause they're so
That's the
funny.
funny thing is like I feel like sometimes horror gets like what's a good word? I don't know, downgraded or like looked down upon in ways because one, it has these big franchises that pump out movies. And in general, there are a lot of poorly made and just like bad horror
Mhm.
movies.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot. Like
Mhm.
there's just so much of them that it's like the genre in its entirety then is like I don't know, it's not taken seriously as like certain other genres, you know? It's so interesting of a genre though because it's like, oh, it might get like bashed or looked down upon, but it is one of the like and I want to say it's probably makes like the most money of all the genres. Maybe
Yeah.
not the most money, but it makes enough money that they're still making them every single year.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, I can name quite a few bad horror
Oh,
movies
me too.
that I've seen, like, ah but there's also a lot of really good ones. What
Right.
I love about horror, though, when it comes to, like, the bad ones, is that they can be really fun in their own way. Like,
Yeah.
if you just want a good laugh, it's like unintentional comedy.
No, that's actually true though. I think there's like definitely a difference between like bad like horror where it's like, oh, this is just I can't even watch this. This is just crappy filmmaking versus like bad horror where it's just kind of cheesy and goofy. I think there's a
Mhm.
difference because like there are some horror movies I've watched where I'm like this is horrible, but then I just keep watching it. But then there are ones that
Yeah,
I've started that I'm like this is like actually intolerable. Like I cannot watch this.
yeah, like, the ones that Usually I find, like, the ones that take themselves too seriously, but, like, aren't very scary are the ones I can't stand
Yeah.
because I just end up really bored. But then there's some that are, like, super corny and campy, and I find it really fun and, like, laughing at what's
Yeah.
happening.
I definitely think the Friday the 13th movies fulfill that, especially the original ones. They're very, very campy. Like, I mean, they're out of camp. They're at Camp Crystal Lake, and they're just, like, so cringe, like, Friday the 13th is the embodiment of, like, the horror movie tropes, the group of teenagers going off into the woods, the really slutty couple that has a sex scene, and then there's, bare
Yeah.
boobs, and then they get killed. There's the, female protagonist who doesn't have a love interest and survives, it just hits all those boxes.
Mhm.
Halloween did go before that, and I definitely like Halloween more. Um, which I have interesting things to talk about for Halloween, but aside from that, but Friday the 13th is really what nailed in that whole group of teenagers just in the
Yeah,
woods making horrible decisions. How
I know.
walking out
Like,
being
they
like,
all screw
"Christy,
up.
where'd you go? Oh my god." I don't that's not an actual name for the movie, but like,
Yeah, yeah.
"Hello, who's there? This is not funny. Come out."
Yeah, I love the scenes where, like, the main characters call out and just, like, give their positions away. That's always so
Oh my
funny.
god, they always say hello. Dude, I would never. I'm sorry. Unless
Or
I
they hear, like,
specifically, like, news like, if someone was with me right at that moment and they walked away, then I might be like, "Hey, where'd you go?" But if it's just like, oh, there might be someone around that I know, and I'm just gonna be like, "Dan, are you there? Dan, this is not funny. I am not feeling this at all."
like, when they hear, like, a creepy noise and it's, like, obviously, like, something weird going on,
Yeah.
and they decide to go check it out, and they're like, "Maybe it's my friend."
Yeah, literally
Look at
always
it.
every time, and the girls always go out, like, in some skimpy pajamas or, like, only wearing a top or something and their underwear, and they're
Mhm.
just, like, walking around like, "Hello?" I swear to God, they do it all the time.
Yeah.
They never they're not it's cold outside and they're going out without any pants on, like, "Come on, man. It's chilly. It's the evening."
Yeah.
Uh, but it's just I don't know, there's something so and what I will say, like, okay, going back to Halloween. Halloween was released in 1978, and it, like, was the first slasher to s it wasn't the first slasher, it was the first movie that created the slasher genre and, like, started the trend. There was, like, Psycho back in the '60s. I don't know the
Mhm.
exact year, and I don't wanna get it wrong. And that definitely was I would probably say is probably more like what you would call the first slasher, but it didn't start the trend. Halloween did, and Halloween, was actually I just recently was learning about this in class. It's so cool. I'm geeking out right now, but it,
Yeah.
um, it was actually really low budget. Like, it was one of those movies that was super low budget, just kinda put together, but then it got this, like, cult following. And I always love stories like that because I just love the idea of an underdog or something that was just made with passion, not for money, that ended up,
Mhm.
you know, becoming successful. But it's just funny to
Yeah,
hear about,
definitely.
like I mean, they filmed in California, and to make it seem like fall, they'd, like, spray paint leaves brown and throw them around. And the Michael Myers mask is actually, like, literally a $2 mask they got and painted white. I don't remember who it was supposed to be, but it was just, like it was $2.
That's so funny.
So and that movie's just that movie is so well done because I mean, aside from the creepy, like, aspect of just being stalked by someone, it was the cinematography really, like, helped emphasize that. And okay, what was oh, why I brought this up was because Halloween introduced the idea of like tackling the fear of being stalked. And that's why I think it's so good, is because like, especially because the protagonist is a female, Laurie Strode, and most of these movies have a female protagonist. Not always, but most of them, it's like a female protagonist. Anyways, back to the point. They literally call Michael Myers in the movie, they call him the boogeyman. And I just, like, because Laurie Strode is like babysitting, so the kid's always like, I see the boogeyman. And she's like, there's no such thing as
Mhm.
the boogeyman. So that's the funny thing, is like, this is supposed to be like a slasher, and people think slashers are lighthearted and just like there's no deeper meaning to them, as they do think with like all horror movies. They think it's just like whatever, it's just for fun, it's just, oh, I want to get spooked. But there is like some deeper meaning in some of them, not all, but when you think about it, because it's like he's the embodiment of fear. And it's like the throughout the whole movie they try and kill him over and over. He gets like stabbed in the neck and shot and falls off a house, but he still lives even at the end of the movie. And I just think it's an interesting meaning there, because it's like fear itself never really dies. And this fear, this particular fear of being like being stalked, and fear always being around the corner, evil being around the corner, is just like really interesting. And I feel like it's a really good, not just for slasher, but for any genre of horror. I think it's a great landmark, because it really demonstrates the genre as a whole.
Yeah.
Because I think horror itself is something that is never going to die, because people want to get scared. They have since the beginning of time. People tell each other scary stories around campfires, and I think that's the beauty of horror.
Yeah. It's definitely like one of the most primal feelings we have. It's just like this inner fear. So, horror definitely is an interesting genre since it directly deals with that.
Right. And I think,
The thing,
sorry, you go ahead.
alright. I do appreciate um some slashers. Like you said, there are some really good ones, and then there's like some that are like, eh,
Yeah.
you know. I think part of the reason I really like psychological horror in particular, though, is because it has to do not necessarily with like a physical thing being present and like hunting you down or that you're afraid of, but more with to do with a distortion of the senses.
Right.
And that's like the kind of thing that would freak me out more personally. I guess that's the nice thing about horror, is that like there it can also differ from person to person what people are more afraid of, and so
That's
there's
true.
all these subgenres too. I just like things that like kind of mess more of like your mental state, or like this uncertainty
Right.
is what I find mostly freaky.
Yeah.
Um,
I totally get that. It's just like, and I'll watch them. It's just, for me, the scarier part is the idea of a physical, like, being hunting or evil hunting me down. But I do get that for some people, psychological horror is more scary, because it like really gets in your head and makes you question reality and your own
mhm.
mental state and all that.
Yeah, like what I love about Doki Doki, because that's
Doki
one of the ones
doki.
we both one of the horror games we both are familiar with,
Yeah.
is that like there it's just like the unease doesn't come necessarily from like something outright attacking you, but just like the fact that the world is being manipulated,
Right.
and you don't like entirely understand at first like what's going on, like because it completely catches you off guard. It seems totally normal at
Right.
first.
Like completely normal.
But then to like go through the same thing again but have it like changed, because you're basically replaying the game, but like now like a major character is missing, and another one is like directly manipulating events. So there's like that sense of familiarity because you've been through it before, but now there's also this unease because of all the differences. Like there's these weird things going on. I think it's also like partially randomized for each player because like some events like don't happen for some, but might happen for
Oh, I
others.
did not know that actually.
Yeah,
I had no
yeah.
idea.
There are certain things like that you can get to happen depending like it's like based on like a random generation, but you can get like certain jump scares in some playthroughs, but not in others, or like certain images start flashing on the screen, or things like that.
Hmm.
And it's just like having like that weird stuff happening. It's like I really enjoy that, and also the thought like that the villain is like someone who is trapped in their own creation as well.
Yeah.
Like you're because they're aware that they're stuck
Right.
in a video game, and so they're like in this fixed medium, but are finding ways to kind of break the boundaries. It's something like I find really interesting as well.
Yeah. Doki Doki is a great game. It really does it's so well made because it in the beginning it really is completely normal. There's like maybe some little things that are like a little weird but could even like if you didn't know you were playing a horror game, you could even write them off. If you were like,
Hmm.
"Hey, I just downloaded this and you're just thought it was a normal game," you could just write these little things off like I don't know, just little hints like things that characters say and things you learn about them. Um and then it just all just like that starts to get so weird after like you said the game resets after trying to remember Sayori, right? She kills herself. That's her
Hmm.
name. Okay. Sayori kills herself and the game resets and then she's just not there and it's like it's that part of the game and getting like back into the flow, but then just weird crap happens. They're at each other's throats. It's just like it's so trippy and so disorienting and just like
Yeah.
utterly unnerving.
Hmm.
It's really well done. I will say that like for psychological horror, that may be one of the best examples of one that actually was freaky for me. I would not watch a Doki Doki literature playthrough by myself at night. That's one of the few psychological horror things that I would say. And I think it's there's also within psychological horror there is like almost this like separate little genre of it that's like almost pretends hides under a shroud of innocence, I would say.
Hmm.
I think that that part of psychological horror is actually I find that part very freaky. I think that's the same reason Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is so freaky because it
Yeah.
starts off and you're like this is like Sesame Street. Like they're just puppets, but oh my god, that series is freaky, dude.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
so
that's what I really like about psychological horror is like that particular niche where it seems like normal and innocent, but then they find ways to mess with you unexpectedly. Like that those are the things that like really get me freaked out and I love it.
right. I agree with you on that. It's the part of psychological horror that doesn't do that I just find kind of goofy sometimes. Like I've seen, but have you seen the It movies?
Yeah, I
Okay.
have.
I love those movies. I like watching them. They're fun, they're great. But honestly, I laugh at them because the stuff that happens and the way it gets trippy with the stuff that like Pennywise does, it just makes me laugh because it's so just unrealistic because that's never going to happen. I just
Hmm.
find I find it funny. I went when I saw the
No, yeah.
second one in the theater, people thought I was crazy because I was just laughing. Like when the head of the kid that like killed himself so he didn't have to come back to the reunion, Pennywise like made his head there, which obviously wasn't really there. And then it sprouted legs and crawled around like a spider. I just
No,
laughed.
okay. I have to agree with you on that for sure cuz like watching both of them, I didn't take them that seriously.
Yeah.
I watched them with my family. We were laughing at a
Yes.
lot of it because I think part of it has to do with like the imagery that it chooses to use. It's just
Yeah.
like some of the creatures it creates just are so out there that you can't help but react like, "What is this?" and
Yeah,
just start
like, it's
laughing
just
at it.
trippy, and it's almost too indulgent. I would say that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
I
I
tend
I
to
mean, and
prefer it to
even,
be
like,
like
I'd say the scariest movie or scene from those movies is the first scene of the first one where Pennywise is in the drain and then bites the kid's arm off. I don't remember the kid's name. Just because that one's a lot more
Georgie.
simple, and it
Mhm.
actually does have that trope we were just talking about where shrouding yourself in, like, innocence, pretending that it's, like, you know, a clown. So
Yeah.
that scene was effective. I just think for later in that movie, and I would say it got really bad in the second one where it was too
Uh-huh.
much. It was too trippy that it was literally like, "Come on, this is just ridiculous. You guys are just using every little penny of your special effects budget."
Yeah. I like it when the horror is more subtle. Like it's not so in your face, you know?
Yeah.
And the one thing is that I haven't actually read the original book, but I hear that it's somehow even more trippy than the movies.
I wouldn't be
Like
surprised, but I bet it's more
like
effective because it's Stephen King.
yeah, I don't know how exactly it ends up being like done, but from what I've read of like summaries, they basically like contact this they defeat Pennywise by getting in touch with this otherworldly mystical turtle god thing and like learn like the art of like mental kung fu and then
Uh, uh,
like get into this battle of wills with Pennywise and
what?
I don't and then there's a scene and apparently in the original book there's also a scene where um I don't know if I should say it because it's pretty inappropriate.
Say
The only way for them to escape the sewers is
Teacup is incapable of saying naughty words.
they basically have.
I already mark our podcast as explicit because I tend to
All right.
swear.
They have an orgy basically.
The children.
Mm-hmm.
How old are they all supposed to be? Like 12, 13?
Preteens or teenagers or
Okay,
something. I don't
maybe
know.
they're supposed to be more like 13, 14. Still. And most
Yeah.
of them are dudes.
Mm-hmm. No, they all like do it with the one girl character that's there.
I am I am shocked and
Yeah.
slightly appalled but also amused and somehow not surprised, honestly, because it's Stephen King and
Yeah.
well, I'm also not surprised that they didn't put that in the movie. Oh my god, I don't even think they could because of the actors were all
Probably not.
underage, man. Like they
Yeah.
could not have
Yeah.
done that. That's okay. Well, then I'm gonna say that the movie did a good job of toning it back, especially with the
Mhm.
dimension thing and the turtle and the mental kung fu, because they do something at the end of the first movie where they kind of have to conquer their fear of Pennywise to defeat him. So I think that was
Mhm.
a much more reasonable ending.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I need to read it. I don't know why I haven't.
Yeah, I suggest, like, looking up on Wikipedia, like, just a summary of the stuff that
No, I want to
happens,
read
because
the whole thing, man.
when you look at it, you'll be like, "What on earth?
Dude,
What was, like, he on drugs when he wrote that part, or what?"
he's an alcoholic. Well, at least he was. I don't know if he is anymore. But, he was probably just down in those six packs, man, and just Stephen King is a little bit fucked up. I'm gonna be real. Like his mind is messed up. The stuff he thinks of, but that's why he's so great.
Yeah. I do like reading his works a
He
lot.
just thinks of things that no one thinks of, and that's great. This isn't horror, but my favorite book from him is about the JFK assassination and the time
Yeah,
traveler.
I wanna bring that up because I like that a lot. Because even though it's more, like, historical fiction-y than horror in that
Yeah,
one,
it's also kind of
it
thriller though.
still it still has, like, some horror elements.
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't necessarily have, like, a person, like, like trying to kill the main character, but it's like this kind of force of time
Yeah, I
itself
would call it
that's
thriller,
like
definitely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's just like kind of like messing with like every attempt he makes. And like what they had like a name for it too. I forget what it was, but as he changes time more, like things begin to distort.
Oh, yeah, because doesn't he go back to the future and then things are weird at one point? Like, after
Mhm.
he actually does prevent the assassination, then he goes to the future and it's, like, not good. But also, he runs into the kids from It. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I remember, like, because he that's something Stephen King will do a lot in his works is, like, dropping, like, little references or hints to, like, some of his other stuff, like a connected
Yeah, it's
universe.
so weird because you'd be like, "Oh, this has nothing to do with this horror series," but then he's just randomly and it works so perfectly, like, it doesn't even feel forced. It's so weird. But anyway, Stephen King is
Mhm,
great, and what I love so much about that book is, like, particularly, he talks about stuff that no other authors wanna talk about, like, when the main character, he has to, like he's testing his time travel thing, and he's gonna go save this other guy's family. Do you remember that?
like,
And
sort
that's
of. It
that's
has been a while since
yeah, that's where he meets the kids or whatever, but whatever. He gets set up to do that, but then the next day he literally has, like, a stomach bug and is, like, crapping his pants and vomiting. And I
Mhm,
just find that so funny because nobody else wants to talk about that in their books, in their but it's realistic because crap like that happens.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, Stephen King's great. This is a good time. You haven't seen The Shining, have you?
No, I
Ah,
haven't.
another a classic in the horror genre. I
I know,
disgrace.
I'm just so uncultured.
So uncultured. You know the funny thing is, Stephen King doesn't actually like the Shining adaptation.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that.
Um, this isn't really a spoiler because I assume you kind of have heard the like basis of the Shining because it's
Mhm.
everywhere. Where the
Yeah.
guy goes up to the lodge with his wife and kid and to like watch it for the winter season when no one's there, and he goes crazy, basically.
Yeah.
I think the main issue Stephen King had with the movie was the casting of this guy. Because they casted Jack Nicholson, which I don't know if you've seen Jack Nicholson or anything, but he played the Joker at one point in some of the older Batman
Mm.
movies. He's a unnerving looking dude, like he's freaky, but the main character in The Shining is supposed to be you're supposed to like him at first. You're supposed to he's supposed to be charming. He's supposed to be like
Mhm.
you're not at all supposed to look at him as the villain, and then there's this very genuine progression into madness. Um, but
Yeah.
in the movie, they cast Jack Nicholson, and he's not a charming dude. Great actor, but and he did a great job of the crazy part of it, but it just wasn't enough of a jump into madness. And that's
Right.
what
Yeah.
that was that was Stephen King's issue with the movie, if I'm remembering correctly, which is valid, but it's still a very good movie. It's just then it misses this important aspect of the book.
Mhm.
It's funny because the other day I watched this movie called Amityville Horror. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's based on a true story.
I think I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with what it's about.
Amityville Horror is it's one of those true story ones, and it's like about this house that's supposed to be like possessed by like demons and evil spirits. There was like a murder there, um well, multiple murders. This guy goes crazy and kills like his entire family, like six people including like younger siblings. And he gets taken to jail, but the movie isn't about that. And this is real. This is what actually happened in the house. um but then literally within, I don't know, like a decade, if not like less, um, a family moves into the house and they
Mm.
report a bunch of crazy crap happening there and being affected by the house and the presence. And that's what Amityville Horror is about. But anyway, there's an older one, but then there's a newer one. I watched the newer one, which actually had Ryan Reynolds in it. And which is kind of why I wanted to watch it, because I was like, Ryan Reynolds? What? That's not allowed. Ryan Reynolds is supposed to he's Ryan Reynolds. We all laugh at him. He's the best, you
Yeah.
know? So I was like, and he play but in the movie, it was a very similar thing where the dad, or the stepdad, I guess, the male figure of the house, like, descended into madness. Very similar to The Shining. But that I just thought it was funny, because actually that movie is a better example of what Stephen King wanted, because obviously it starts off, Ryan Reynolds' character is all great. He's, because Ryan Reynolds is good at being charming.
Mhm.
So that was a better example of that progression from being the character that people like to fucking crazy and trying to kill everyone.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was just funny because I thought that was interesting little tidbit there.
Of the, like, Stephen King stories or film adaptations, because there's, like, a lot,
Yeah, there are a lot.
which ones would you say, like, you prefer more?
I don't know. I really like I actually haven't seen as much as I should. Honestly, I should probably watch more. I've seen The Shining. I've seen the It movies, not the original It. That movie, the original is 3 hours long,
Oh,
and I kind
wow.
of don't want to watch it. Honestly, I'm not that interested. Um, and then I've seen Children of the Corn, and maybe one other thing. So I actually have not seen that much. I still need to watch Pet Cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That was one of the ones I wanted to bring up. I haven't seen the film for it, but I've read the book, and I remember that being one of the ones that he wrote that I found really freaky.
ooh, okay. I have to read and watch that then. I haven't had a chance yet. And I
I
haven't
heard,
seen
like
oh my god, I'm sorry. I feel embarrassed now talking about Stephen King, and I haven't watched Carrie, which is also like a classic horror. I haven't seen Misery, which is probably more thriller, but I did just remember that I have seen oh my god, there's this one that was based off a short story of Stephen King, and it was, like, called The Silver Bullet or something, and it was about a werewolf. Don't watch it, it's not good. I'm sure the Stephen King
um,
short is fine, but the the movie that they based off of it was not good. Would not recommend. It was like an '80s, '90s one, and it was really cringe. Like, the werewolf itself, oh my god. I
mhm.
don't know who thought that was a good idea, but it wasn't a good idea. But I guess from what I've watched, The Shining's probably my favorite. I do enjoy the movies, but the the vibe of The Shining is very eerie. I know it's not it misses that point that I was just talking about of the book with the main character, but it it still is like a lot of the scenes, the cinematography is all very, very cool. So I think that one's probably my favorite from what I've seen. I definitely obviously need to watch more because now I look like a noob. I've seen a lot of horror, but like there's so much that it's like
Yeah.
you can't exactly see it all.
Mhm. I remember I can't remember the name of it because it's a little bit of a more obscure Stephen King movie, but it was one where the main character was, like, cursed by, like, this homeless, gypsy woman
What the fuck? What?
to, like, constantly lose weight,
Oh my
and
god.
except, like, he would lose weight, but, like, he wouldn't stop. He would just keep on losing weight, and so at first he thought like he was sick or had cancer or something because he was losing so much in such a short amount of time. And I believe he started off like overweight. So in the beginning, he was like, "Oh, my exercise is actually working. My diet's working,"
Mhm.
and was like elated. But then like when it wasn't stopping, he was like getting more freaked out and realized, oh, he was
Oh
cursed.
no.
Then in the movie, you see him like gradually become like skinnier and skinnier until he's almost like this like skeletal husk.
Oh, that's freaky.
Yeah, so that was pretty freaky from what I remember. he does end up like being able to get rid of the curse, but like it has to pass on to someone
Oh
else.
no.
And so the movie ends with him passing it on to his family.
His family?
Yeah.
Oh my god. That's horrible. That's kind
And that's just how it ends. So I remember that one pretty well, even though I don't remember the name of it.
yeah.
But that one I found interesting.
That's yeah, I haven't that's definitely more obscure. I have not heard of that, but I might have to watch that now cuz that sounds freaky. That kind of reminds me though of The Ring, the like 2002 one I think is what it is. Cuz there's also Rings, but I don't think I've seen that. But whatever. The Ring is like it's the girl that comes out of the TV. It's a VHS, you put it in.
Mhm.
But the only way to get her to stop coming for you was to like duplicate the tape and give it to some or the VHS and give it to someone else. So that kind of reminds me of that movie. And I know like a landmark in horror now because creepy girl with long hair coming out of the TVs,
Mhm.
everybody knows it. But oh, but probably some of my favorite horror movies are M Night Shyamalan movies. Have you seen any M Night Shyamalan movies?
Um,
Get Out.
no.
Get Out. Bro, I want to be M
I
Night
haven't saw
Shyamalan, I
them.
swear. So, okay, what are some good ones? The Sixth Sense is amazing. Um,
Oh, that one I do know about. I haven't seen it, but like
yeah, I'm
I.
sure you do because it's groundbreaking,
Mhm.
obviously. Yeah, the Sixth Sense is fantastic. The Village is also amazing, and Split, which is a more recent one, is also
Yeah, I'm familiar with all of them, and like I pretty much like know the basic like plot and even some of the twists. I just haven't seen
oh
them.
my gosh, I'm banishing you. Split is
Didn't
amazing though.
didn't he also work on like the one that just came
Yeah,
out,
old.
like old? Except I hear a lot of people like make fun of that
Okay,
one.
yeah, that one's a little goofy, but like I liked it. But it was definitely one of the ones that I would say is more of a laughing one.
Mm.
Um, just because of oh my god, the beach where they're aging. Like, can I give you some
See,
spoilers
it
about it?
sounds like yeah. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so this first of all, this there's like kids on the beach, but obviously then they're aging rapidly. So then they become teenagers, and then they get left alone, a guy and a girl, not the ones that are related, and they have sex and don't know that that's how you make babies because they're literal children mentally.
Oh jeez.
And
Okay.
then
Okay.
the girl gets pregnant and obviously like in like 10 minutes is ready to give birth, and
Ooh.
then she gives birth and the baby immediately dies because babies need constant nurturing, and because it's
Mhm.
aging rapidly, there is none of that. They all have to eat a lot because they're like growing and aging quickly. But yeah, so it's pretty messed up. It's a pretty fucked up movie. And there's this one girl who's like young, but then she has I don't remember what it's called, the like thing that women particularly have where their bones are really really like weak and will like break easily.
Osteoporosis, I
Yes,
think.
I think that's it. Um and at towards the end of the movie when she's like dying, she like oh my god, this is actually a really really freaky scene. Like probably one of the freakiest I've seen in movies because they're like in a cave, two of the kids, and then she's in there because they were looking for her, and she oh my god, her bones just start breaking like at all different positions, and she's like screaming and like clawing after them, and like oh it's really really freaky. So that was
Mm.
a freaky scene, but like overall it's just like so out there. It's a little too much M Night Shyamalan. I still liked watching it because I like horror, but
Mhm.
it was a trip. Let's just say it was a trip. I think what's great about M. Night Shyamalan movies is he always has like some kind of twist. So with that one, there were like it's like an experiment. Like they throw tourists
Yeah,
on yeah.
yeah, like I like already like heard about like the twist for them because I'm like I'm probably not gonna see this movie, but I'll read up on it a little bit just to see what it's about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's just some government. That's not like not definitely not his best twist, but it was
Mhm.
still kind of like fucked up. You're like, "What the shit?" But yeah. I can't believe I haven't talked about this yet, but okay, listen, my favorite slasher is Scream. It was made in the 90s, and I think the reason that it's so good, it's kind of like satire because it like all the people in the movie, there's like references to horror movies, to all the ones made
Mhm.
in the like late 70s and 80s. Like the characters are all aware of horror movies, and they're like murders start happening in their town, and they're like, oh, we gotta do the 3 rules of staying alive in a horror movie. So it's like self-aware, and it's a really good movie. It's got a good twist. It's got but and it has all the horror movie tropes, but acknowledges them and makes fun of them.
Mm.
So that that one is my favorite. I just got to see it in theaters for its 25th anniversary, and I loved it because that was fun. But we have to watch that because that's definitely
Yeah.
that is best slasher in my opinion. Love it.
Mhm.
Um,
Like next time we hang out, definitely I think just do like a horror movie night.
Horror movie binge because you need to be educated. I literally
Yeah, you
could
need
teach
to
classes on horror because
uh, make me cultured on all the horror movie stuff.
I'm like, all right, here's your extracurricular activity or course that you have to take. It's about horror. Here we go. Time to teach you. There'll be a quiz on
Mhm.
Monday.
I'll take notes and
Yeah,
everything
take
while we're
notes.
watching.
Take notes. All right. So, what do you think that the overall meaning of? Oh my god. But you know what's an interesting another subgenre of horror is found footage.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think found footage movies often are often psychological horror. Not
Mhm.
always, but they are often psychological horror, but that's a really interesting another genre of horror that's very unique.
For Blair Witch, wasn't there I'm trying to yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of
Oh, did you watch
that.
it?
Um, I think because there were 2, weren't there?
Yes, there was the
I watched
original.
this I watched the newer one,
Oh, the 2016 one?
yeah, but not the older one.
Yeah, the older one was like I think it was just at the end of the 90s. Like I think it was like 98 maybe. So yeah, my I weirdly Blair Witch is like yeah, it was 99. The Blair Witch, well it's called the Blair Witch Project, is like actually like my least favorite found footage film, which is interesting because it is the found footage film. But
Mhm.
my issue, and I actually even liked the 2016 version better than the original one. Still not my favorites, but my issue was that there was too much unseen. The whole
Yeah.
idea of it was like, oh, there's something lurking in the shadows in the forest and we can't see it. But it was like too much. And there were like sound effects, but they were so hard to hear if unless you're like watching on a laptop with earbuds.
Mhm.
Literally the scariest scene of the original Blair Witch Project is the end scene that everybody knows and talks about where they go into an abandoned house they find and then they're standing in the corners of the room.
Yeah.
So yeah. What did you think about the 2016 version?
I was kinda bored during it,
If you were
honestly.
bored with that one, you would have been bored with the other one cuz
Oh, man.
nothing happens.
Because I felt like there wasn't really a whole lot going on plot-wise. They just, like, were camping out in the woods, and then sometimes they'd wake up and there'd be, like, some I don't know, creepy like wooden things,
That's it.
but like nothing was really going on.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree.
so
And that was an improvement from the first one because the first one, dude, it was so boring. Like, it was just okay. Another big issue with it was like there were so these points of these portions of time where like the characters are literally just arguing because they're like, "What do we
yeah.
do? How do we get out of here?" But it went on for so long, and it was the same
Mhm.
arguments over and over and over. And it was just like,
Yeah.
on one hand, at first it was like, oh hey, this is like realistic. This is, the panic feel like it was good acting. It felt like the panic is real. Like this is how people they're illogical. They don't know what they're doing. It made sense, but for a movie, there was too much of it. There was no
Mhm.
plot moving it forward. There was nothing. It was just boring.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt watching it. Just I like it more when there's like a storyline going
Yeah.
on along with the horror. Like it's not just scary things happening to a group, but like there's like lore behind it.
Yeah. Okay, I have the perfect listen. My favorite found footage film is called As Above So Below. And it actually takes place in the catacombs beneath Paris. So
Oh.
it is really good. I think it's highly underrated, and I think it's 1,000 times more interesting and scary than the fucking Blair Witch Project. And I also like the Creep movies, particularly the first one. And that one actually maybe could call that like found found footage slasher because there's no supernatural parts of that. It's literally like this guy hires videographers to come to his house and like film him like for different reasons. He just lures them out there and then eventually kills them. But so I guess maybe you could call that a slasher, but it's super like they call it creep for a reason. The guy is really creepy and weird and
Mhm.
so that's another found footage film that I like 1,000 times more than I like Blair Witch Project. I just think the Blair Witch Project is just not good. It could be good.
Yeah.
I like the found footage film that we made more. Which
Yeah,
if you
that was a lot of fun.
yeah, if you guys haven't seen it, go watch it. It's called The Adjacent Dark and it has a plot more than the Adjacent Dark and more than the Blair Witch Project. It's I mean, not I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. But it's better. And it's starring, Teacup and me and a few other friends. So, definitely check that out if you guys haven't yet. And we also did the Moon Creek Woods a while back, which wasn't found footage. That one was I wouldn't call it psychological. I'd call that just supernatural horror.
Yeah,
It's kind of another so many different subgenres of horror, man.
they are a
Because you've
lot.
got like
Yes.
supernatural slasher, you've got just slasher where they're just people. You've got found footage because there's all the subgenres, but then they mix and they go over each other. And another part of horror that we haven't talked about is actually like comedy horror, which I
Yes,
love.
I love comedy
What
horror.
comedy horror have you seen?
Um, so I've seen like the recent ones like Freaky Friday the
Oh my
13th.
god, that movie is so good.
It is.
Freaky is so funny.
And they're also the ones who did Happy Death Day, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen that one too.
Blumhouse. Yeah, Blumhouse, whatever. I said it right. Don't talk to me. Um but Blumhouse is they have so many good movies. I want to work for them one day. That's my dream. But yeah, they've made some really funny like yeah, comedy horrors. And it's always like it's not like comedy, it's just dark humor, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, Happy Death Day is great. The second one was weirdly not that good. I don't know if you've seen the second one. Eh.
I don't
Yeah.
think I
Yeah,
have. I think I always saw the first.
it's not great. It's fine. But it's weirdly not even horror anymore. It's almost sci-fi. I don't know. Like there was like a device that was causing the time loop. Like
Oh,
it was weird. It was weird. So the first one, the first Happy Death Day is great, but the other one, eh. But yeah, that one freaky. So the Zombieland movies are really good. Those are great, which are obviously zombie movies. And there's another comedy zombie movie called Shaun of the Dead.
haven't haven't heard of that
You
one.
haven't heard of Shaun of the Dead?
No, I'm
Oh
sorry.
my
I
gosh.
told you that when it comes to
Oh,
horror, I'm just uncultured.
get out. Leave. Leave. Shaun of the Dead is fantastic, and that one's British, so it's got like dry dark humor. You know how British humor can be sometimes.
Yeah.
That one's really funny. But yeah, I love comedy horror because it's such a, you wouldn't think to put it together. Like it's definitely a more recent trend in like horror movies. Cause I mean, I don't think there are a whole ton of like in the 70s and 80s they didn't make comedy horror, you know? So it's
Hmm.
because it's just you wouldn't think that it works, but it does when done right.
Yeah. There's one older example, and I wish I could remember the name of it.
What's it about?
It was okay. So it was this franchise. It was this franchise, right? And they had like I think 3 movies or maybe more. The first one was supposed to be like a legit horror movie
Yeah.
where they had like some monster chasing a bunch of teenagers in the woods, that those classic horror movie tropes. Except it was like so bad and so cheesy
Yeah.
that everyone who went to see it thought it was a comedy.
Oh.
And so like it got really good reviews as a comedy. They're like this movie is so funny, and it got really popular just like for being known as like this really funny terrible horror movie.
Was it the Scary Movie franchise?
No, no, no,
Okay.
no, no. Because it wasn't trying to be funny. It was supposed to be like a
Okay.
legit and it was and it was just that bad. It was just that badly executed that everyone thought it was a comedy. And so then when they saw that reaction, they're like, let's actually go with it. And so then the subsequent movies they made, they still like were like supposed to be kind of like this horror-ish,
Okay.
but like but they actually like allowed it to be goofy and funny, and people loved it. So I'm trying to remember, and it was an older example too.
Yeah, I'm trying
Like
to look around and see if maybe I can find what you're talking about.
it was my dad who introduced it to me, but he loved those movies. He laughs. We laugh so hard every time we see them.
I'll have to see if I can find them. But did I tell you about another example of comedy horror? Did I tell you about Willy's Wonderland?
No.
Okay, so this is literally like a spoof off FNAF. Like there Willy's Wonderland is like a Chuck E. Cheese-esque place, a thing with
Hmm.
children's place with animatronics. But it's starring Nicolas Cage, and he doesn't say a single word the entire movie.
Oh.
He doesn't say a single word. He literally has like sunglasses, and like there are other characters that talk, but he does not say anything. And the entire movie he's like drinking this like energy drink like constantly, and they like it's like super dramatic.
Hmm.
It is so weird, but honestly I love it so much. So yeah, that's another good one to watch. Have you have you seen any of the like gameplay of Until Dawn?
I've seen a little bit of it.
Until Dawn is another well, that's a video game. We haven't really talked enough about video games. Come on, horror video
Yeah.
games. But Until Dawn is basically it's very campy. Like it feels a lot like Friday the 13th, but like up in the mountains in the snow.
Hmm.
And it just feels like people have like criticized it for being an interactive movie, but I don't think it is. I think it's plenty of gameplay, a lot of quick time events, which I'm horrible at. so I just end up killing all of
Yeah,
them.
same.
So bad, dude. But that one's really fun because it is very campy, but it also like has like a lot of underlying story and history around it. Cause like on this mountain, there's the Wendigos,
Mhm.
which is one of my favorite like monsters in monster lore because everybody talks about like vampires and werewolves and zombies, but Wendigos are like actual Native American. I mean, those all originate from myths too, but like I don't know. I just really like Wendigos because they're less used, less overdone, and they are based off actual like Native American um legends and stuff. So I think they're very
Yeah.
interesting. But that's the antagonists of Until Dawn. Um and it's really cool because there's all this history around the mountain about like these miners that got trapped in the mines in the mountain and became Wendigos, and this old asylum that used to be up there and is abandoned now, and that it's a really cool game.
There is one other psychological horror game that I had in mind for this discussion. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called Amori.
Amori, I've heard of it.
I've
I don't
only
know if
seen
I've
like
seen gameplay of it.
I've only seen just a little gameplay of it because I hear that it's actually going to be coming out to Switch. And so I don't want to spoil myself entirely because I plan on playing it when it does come out. But from like what I've seen of it, it seems like super interesting because like
Oh, it's
you
like
start
okay, I see.
you start off in like you kind of switch between these two worlds. There's like the real world where some of the gameplay takes place, but then there's also kind of like this headspace where you're like in the main character's like
Yeah,
own head, you know?
interesting.
And so yeah, and so there's like a lot of stuff that like goes on symbolically too in the game that I find interesting that like directly relates to stuff that happens in the real world portions of the gameplay. And you kind of like get to learn a little bit more about the character's past as you like switch and play between like what's going on in his real life and like what's going on in his head.
That's
And
really
so
cool.
yeah, and so I'm really looking forward to like when the Switch adaptation is released because I've been wanting to play it for a really long time.
Yeah, that is not. How do you find the like one indie horror game I haven't seen because nobody I watch has played it? Jeez Louise. I yeah, I've seen so much indie horror. I literally like watch it all the time, and yet you find the one I haven't seen. It looks
I
cool
know.
though. I definitely am interested. I'm interested to see um maybe play it or watch someone play it because that it looks pretty cool. But you know what? FNAF is a great franchise. Five Nights at Freddy's. I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
I should say Five Nights at Freddy's for the people who aren't fans of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
only the cool kids say FNAF.
Oh, only the cool
Only the
kids.
cool kids. But and that's kind of a what's interesting is like indie horror games have their own trends and subgenres.
Yeah.
So like FNAF started this whole mascot genre of indie horror games,
Mm-hmm.
which is really interesting.
Yeah, and like the thing I like about those games is that your level of agency is kind of taken away, and
Right.
that adds to the horror because you can really only do a limited number of things since you're sitting in the office. You pretty much can just like check the cameras, mess with the vents, and like control the power, which you don't have that much of
Right.
to begin with. So it's just like you're doing what you can with like what limited actions are available to you
Right. It
to try to stop these things from coming after you, and that's what I find the most interesting about it.
yeah, it was groundbreaking because instead of like all the other games where you're running or you're hiding or you're
Mhm.
fighting, you have to stay where you are and like you said like do play with the what little you have to protect yourself from these threats. And the new oh my god, there's a release date for the new one, Security Breach. It's coming out like
Oh.
December 16th or 15th or something. I'm so excited. I wish I could play it, but it's PS5 exclusive.
Oh man.
Excuse me? But, I really, love the whole story behind the first FNAF game where Scott Cawthon made it, and he had been making games, and this was gonna be his last one, and he just didn't think it would go anywhere, and then it just took off. Like, he was just a
Mhm.
one-man team making games, made his little FNAF game, and now he's got a PS5 exclusive major release, like,
Yeah.
so cool.
And I love how he's just like been building into the lore of it with each new
Oh my
game.
gosh.
Though at this point, I have some trouble keeping track of it because there's so
I
much
have
going
no
on.
idea. I've literally no idea. And well, I have some idea, but if I had not watched I think I've watched most of Game Theory, MatPat's videos on FNAF. If
Mhm.
those didn't exist, if there was no MatPat, I would be screwed. I would have no idea.
Yeah,
No idea.
same.
Because FNAF lore is like I think that's also the beauty of the games. The games themselves are pretty simplistic and not simplistic, but like you can get through them and work with them pretty easily. But like then the lore is just insanely huge somehow.
Yeah. You gotta like read the entire wiki to just keep
Oh
up
my
with
god,
it.
yeah. Cause now there's all those books and they're all supposed to be canon?
Mhm.
And it's not just the
Yeah.
original like trilogy with Silver Eyes and all that. Like there's this entire other series now, and there's all the like little things that he'd hide on his website that you could only find in the code of the website or the code of the games, randomly
Mhm.
generated things in the games that don't always pop up. Like there's
Yeah.
so much. I love it. I love overly complicated lore. I'm just a sucker for it.
Me too. Mhm.
But yeah. I guess we should probably wrap it up now. I could literally talk for
Oh yeah.
hours,
I know.
hours
I know.
about horror. But I think, and I don't. This was definitely a bit of a looser episode. I don't know how well we argued for each
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, mostly we just kind of like talked about what we liked more, but
I think that's
but we
okay though.
agree on a lot of stuff when it comes to horror because we do both enjoy it. It's just like we just have different preferences within it.
Right, like we both like the entirety of horror, but then yeah, within each one, of course, as we always do in our friendship, we just have different favorites
Yeah.
within things we like, which is so funny because that's everything. We both love Zelda, but then we have different favorite games. It's just that's always how it is
Mhm.
with our friendship, and it's iconic. Just gonna say it. Where's the fan art?
Oh yeah. So,
Send in the fan art. Nobody who's watching.
the, the maybe
Yeah,
five
probably five
genres.
people. Probably just people we know. I know my family didn't even listen to the last episode because most of them don't know anything about Zelda.
Shame. You gotta educate them. No, you need to culture
All
them
right, you're
on
right. You're right. I'm
Zelda.
gonna get on their asses. Go listen to the Zelda episode. I don't care if you haven't played the games or know anything about it. Now is your time.
Yes,
They're
exactly.
just so confused about us talking about like Midna's story and the Link's facial expressions, and they're just like, "What is happening?
Who's Ilya?
Who's Ilya, and
Why,
why do we
why
hate
do
her?
they hate her?
Why do?" Oh my god. Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We really wanted to be able to talk about horror for Halloween. Even though this wasn't like we didn't have any predetermined like ideas for like a horror topic, but I was like, dude, we have to talk about horror.
Mhm.
So that's why we're like, all right, well, we both prefer these parts, so we'll just have an episode where we're talking about all the different genres of horror. And that's what we did. So, thanks so much for tuning in to Beg to Differ. We'll be back every other week to bring you more argumentative content.
Make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening to.
And check out the links to our socials and YouTube channels in the show notes. Bye bye.
Yeah.